Hey everyone, thanks for checking out this video, and I want to start with a question. Have you ever been frustrated or disappointed when you are blamed or labeled for something? So such as, quit being negative, be positive, or you're making things too complicated, or you are so sensitive, or you're overthinking everything. Or being frustrated when you have a lot to say, but when you try to articulate it, you find yourself in a conversation that is so confusing and you don't know how to respond. We live in a world that loves platitudes and statements that are set up against people who critically think about ideas or concepts because they oversimplify complicated concepts and force you to accept things as they are. And so I'm not talking about cliches because cliches are more about things that were once insightful but are overused. Platitudes are phrases that oversimplify complex subjects and are not very insightful or original. So first I want to talk about spiritual bypassing. This is something that I learned this past year and it was really helpful in my journey in life. This is when we use spiritual language or Christian remarks to rise above or avoid reality. God won't give you more than you could bear. Let go and let God. Where God guides, He provides. Always look on the bright side. Failure is not an option, it could be worse, and so on. Now, this does work because it gets you to not focus on your problems, but rather focus on an ideal or God's plan for us. But where does this become a problem? When we continue to live our life in the abstract, in our head, we need to learn skills in dealing with our emotional traumas, our mental health, and with our relationships. So bypassing our problems don't make us better. They only lead us to learn how to suppress what is really bothering us by using projection. Other people are the problem, or a really big one right now is escapism, which is the avoidance of feelings through diversion. Also expression, verbalizing, venting, or stated in body language, getting that energy out of you that's bothering you. We need to be able to have honest conversations about the things that we believe and are taught, because sometimes it's not about being right or wrong, but it's about, is it helpful based on the individual? Most platitudes or statements imply a cookie-cutter approach or a one-size-fits-all. What happens in society or faith culture is it expects people to uphold these ideals or statements, and when they fall short or question that, well, they're judged in terms of their character, they should know better, or harsh judgment about their worth. Why is it our first thought when someone breaks the rules is, they did that on purpose? Or they're being prideful, they're being selfish, or they need to know their place. You know, it's easy to kind of think of that with children when they're acting out. Why don't we think this person must be really struggling? Or maybe they have unfair expectations set on this person because they're not able to adapt as well as someone else. Or maybe this person's not like me, and that's okay. So I have an opinion as to why we don't think of that first.
And the punishment was too severe? What's wrong with you people? I'm serious. I mean, this is what's wrong with the Christian church today. We don't know who God is, and we don't know who we are.
So the idea of an inherent flaw impressed into children by parents, communities, and leaders creates shame-based identities, also known as total depravity. Consequently, this ideology impresses that one must continually fight or deny their emotions or wickedness in order to remain pleasing to God. We are constantly preached at about morals, right and wrong, and people are inherently evil and there is nothing good in them. So of course, most of us, including me, would think about someone acting in a selfish, prideful, evil, agenda-filled way because that is what we have been conditioned to think. Now, it's not easy to see because we constantly hide behind platitudes where we use God as a crutch to not think critically about things. Next, we will get into some examples of how this plays out. Platitude number 1, just have faith and believe in God's promises for your life. Quit looking at the negative and force yourself to only look at the positive. Now, someone who's saying this, I've said this before, is probably really trying to be helpful and might feel like they don't know what to say to someone suffering or discomfort, so they will resort to what is familiar. But this statement is vague, it's subjective to the person you are talking to, and if you take the word faith and use confidence, faith is confidence, you are saying, hey, just have confidence. Now you might be thinking, okay, Tyler, what is the alternative to say? Hey, life sucks and you shouldn't have confidence that things are going to get better? And see, That is why we have a problem working through and thinking about these platitudes, because we genuinely think that is the alternative. What we are actually doing is avoiding certain feelings that could give us clues into what is going on with us. Something that I've learned in therapy and learned in mental health is that emotions aren't good or bad. We assign judgment to them. Rather, if we looked at our emotions as indicators and not something to run from or moralize. And so I've been there before when someone's going through something where they're very pessimistic. You want to say things like, God has a plan for you, don't give up faith. What the enemy meant for harm, God will make it for good. But isn't that just telling someone to stop feeling their emotions? What if there wasn't an answer to their suffering? What if they just need someone to empathize with them and say, wow, that must really be hard, or that really sucks, I'm so sorry. We need to quit trying to make people feel like how we expect them to feel. So in those situations, in reality, we might just feel uncomfortable because we feel an obligation to make things right. Some really close friends of mine, I've been trying to train myself and trying to be more conscious of when they're sharing suffering or they're sharing hurts in their life, that I won't try to give them advice, that I won't try to say, make them feel better. I'll just empathize with them. And I'll say, God, that really sucks. Or, that must be really hard, man. I can't imagine. Empathize with them. It's tough, and that's okay. We live in a very complicated world, and it's understandable that we, as people, want to make sense of things and to simplify them to where if only people followed these ideals and statements, life would be how we want it to be. The problem is they are subjective, and throughout history, people have used good intentions to cause a lot of harm to others. So here's an example I want to give you. I'm going to read a case example from a book titled Understanding and Treating Spiritual Abuse. In this example, let's call the client Amy. Amy is a woman, 35 years of age. During a counseling session, Amy relates a key negative belief that she received in childhood and internalized, I am Satan's child. This belief was given to her by her father, a man whom she genuinely loved, in his attempt to save her soul. Another negative message she received, one that accelerated her addictive responses, was that if she did not follow God's laws, as written in her father's denomination's interpretation of the Bible, then people who were close to her would be taken away. This message was relayed to Amy when she was just 19 years of age, and after a high school guidance counselor, a woman whom she was very close to, died unexpectedly of complications of pneumonia. Her death affected Amy very much, and her father's response to it was her death was God's warning sign to Amy. Her father said if she did not straighten up her ways, which meant getting back into church, an activity she abandoned when she went to college, then God would begin to remove more people from her life, starting with her brother and mother. These words were very damaging, setting off a deep depression that lasted years. So reading that's a really horrible situation for Amy. And right now, your mind is trying to rationalize it and may say things like, well, clearly the father wasn't reading his Bible, or clearly God doesn't kill people to make a point. And we rationalize away the father without thinking, do I hold vague beliefs or subjective beliefs that are harming others? It may be that Amy needed understanding, and she didn't get that because she could have been preached to all the time about God's truth is more important than how you feel. I love you and I know what's best for you. God told me through the Holy Spirit. See, there are no ways to qualify or to prove that these things are true. In reality, these are the Father's interpretations of how he sees the Bible. So what am I getting at? Why does any of this matter? Isn't this just nitpicking and drawing up my own conclusions like the Father is doing in this story? Well, it matters because generalized statements without critical thinking keeps us from identifying a problem and for us to find a solution for it. Maybe we can serve people better if we stop speaking for others who struggle and actually listen to what they are going through and stop dehumanizing them. And another huge point, because you may feel like you're listening to someone, but here's the thing, listen without the urge to fix or give advice. Why? Because you are simply sitting with them in their pain. They'll figure it out. You need to be there for them. Giving advice can be a selfish thing to do, something we try because we like to feel useful, even when it's detrimental to the person. All it does is show you haven't really listened to them, and that you're more eager to talk about what you think and feel than to help them with their thoughts. People are different, and they don't have to fit our cookie-cutter platitudes of how life should be. Now, if your friend is asking for advice, or if they give you permission, absolutely. Give them things that you think, if you were in their position, would help you. But don't demand that someone comes to that conclusion just because you've came to that conclusion. A friend of mine, Doug Pfeiffer, gave me an analogy of how advice isn't always helpful. If two people get in a car accident, that doesn't mean that they're both experience the accident in the same way. So it would kind of be foolish to expect both individuals to benefit from the same piece of advice on how they should deal with the trauma. They are different. We demonize what we don't understand, and sadly, in this area, there are churches that demonize therapy, mental health, and medicine, because they believe if someone utilizes those things, that they aren't relying solely on God anymore, and that makes people scared, because it's scary to rethink or to believe your view could be wrong. I hope this video was helpful, and I'll be doing more in the future. And in conclusion, we all need to rethink and deconstruct what we have been told by people in authority. And a better society will emerge when people choose to listen to each other instead of moralize them as an argument to win. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you found this helpful, comment on this video. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If I missed something, if you guys have any anecdotal things about your life where you've experienced certain platitudes or how some things haven't been helpful for you, or if you yourself are deconstructing some of the things you've been told. So until next time, guys, take care.